I want to go all the way to the 1992 March Madness Regional. Of course, Duke, Kentucky, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Christian Laettner in person. Probably the largest human being I've ever met in person. But that call, that play, that game, and your call, and I believe you were on the call with Len Elmore, if I'm not mistaken. But walk us through a little bit of that game or your memories of that play call and how it was all drawn up.
Well, I've got so many memories of that because it's still regarded by many as the greatest college game ever played. Although when who was the guy from Butler, almost Hank, sank one from midcourt.
Hayward.
Gordon Hayward. And had that gone in, I think I'm second. I mean, Duke, Kentucky's in second place. Let me provide a real backdrop to you. I was doing the Cowboys, and they had a number one draft choice out of Yale in 1969 named Calvin Hill. And Calvin and his wife, Janet, became really, really good friends of mine. And I knew that Janet was expecting. So I said to her, to Calvin rather, when she gives birth, let me know. I'd like to announce it because he was so popular in town. I'd like to announce it on our 10 o'clock news. So on October 5th, 1972, I announced the birth of Grant Henry Hill on my 10 o'clock. Now, that was a Friday. On Sunday, the Cowboys were playing the hated Pittsburgh Steelers. And with less than a minute to go, Calvin took a toss from Staubach, went out to his right, pulled up, and hit a diving Lance Rensel in the end zone for a touchdown, and the Cowboys won. Now fast forward to September 28th, 1992. Here's Grant Hill, unguarded. Pitino chose not to guard him, and I still think. And first of all, just a little backdrop. They were playing Kentucky, coached by Rick Pitino. They had four. They call them the Untouchables. Unrecruited, and then one guy, Jamal Mashburn, who was a really, really good player. And when Sean Woods hit a miraculous bank shot over Christian Laettner, by the way, it went in, and all five of the Duke guys went timeout, 2.1 seconds to go. And they had tried this same play from Grant Hill to Laettner earlier against Wake Forest, and Grant put too much spin on the ball, and it went out of bounds. So Krzyzewski looked at Grant and he said, "Can you make the pass this time?" And Grant said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Laettner, can you catch it?" And he said, "Of course I can." He was not shy. and he'd had a perfect game so far. And so obviously they connected. But in my mind, I'm going back, and I got to tell this story before we left the air about Calvin throwing that pass, the winning touchdown against Pittsburgh. Here's his son, who's now 6'9", and he throws the pass. Laettner had the presence of mind to take a step to his right and then turn around and launched it and went in. And it's still, he was 10 for 10 from the free throws, 10 for 10 from the field, and had 7 rebounds, and should have been ejected from the game.
Oh, right.
Midway in the second half, he put his size 14 in the midsection of a sub for Kentucky named Aminu Timberlake. And Lenny Elmore said, "I'm not sure he intended to do that." And I said, "Yes, he did." and so on the 20th anniversary, they invited us back to New York. Lenny, myself, and Christian. They rented the suite in the Waldorf Astoria, for crying out loud, and they videotaped the three of us watching the game. And when we got to Aminu Timberlake, Christian looked at me and said, "I just knew you guys were going to show that." I think we kind of had to, because you probably should have been given the hook. But it was the greatest performance I think I've ever seen, and it still stands up. And I was doing a radio talk show with a guy in Atlanta once, and because all I said when it went in was, "Yeah!" Yay! And he said, "Are you really proud of that call?" I said, "Well, I'm proud of the game, but the call, I channeled my inner Marv Albert and let it go." But the funny thing is, I thought that Lenny and I had done a good job, and I didn't allow myself to watch the videotape. Now I'm working in Minneapolis regionals. We were getting ready to do Marquette and Kentucky, and I was working with my best friend of all the partners I've had, Billy Raftery. And Bill called me and he said, they're showing the game on ESPN Classic. You need to watch. And so that was the first time I'd ever seen it. I picked it up midway through the first half. And I must tell you, I thought, okay. Now, we had Leslie Visser with us, Lenny, myself, and Leslie, Hall of Fame broadcaster, still a dear, dear friend. And we had her station about 20 feet from the Kentucky play-by-play guy, Kaywood Ledford. 39 years as a voice of the Wildcats. He had announced whenever they lost or if they won the national championship, that would be his final broadcast. And Leslie never got on the air because the game was so compelling. In the aftermath of it, here's Mike out in the middle and the chaos and the celebration. But instead of going to Bob Harris, the Duke radio play-by-play guy, he peeled off one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And he peeled off and he went and sat down with Kaywood Ledford and thanked him for everything that Kaywood had done for the sport that they both loved. It was a really classy thing that he did.